Spontaneous human combustion. What a phenomenon. Deadly to say the least, but nonetheless interesting. Despite being hocus pocus to many, only an alleged cause of death quickly debunked. A long-standing history and a lackluster explanation against it exists. The popular wick theory fails to combat the obvious that these fires burn hot enough to reduce a human body to mere ash. If you'd like to hear the complete story of spontaneous human combustion, be sure to check out my full-length video on the history of it all after this video. For now, let's dive into some of the most prominent cases of spontaneous human combustion, with one of them happening in the 21st century. Mary Reeser. Following her husband's death, 67-year-old Mary Reeser decided to move from her home in Columbia, Pennsylvania to St. Petersburg, Florida to be close to her son, Richard Reeser, who was a prominent doctor in the area. She had no trouble finding a home inside the exclusive northeastern section of St. Petersburg in a modern apartment complex located at 1200 Cherry Street, one of 5 apartments in the Alamanda complex. Here, Mary and her landlady, Pansy M. Carpenter, lived as the only occupants of this 5 adjoined apartment section. Despite moving to St. Petersburg to be closer to her family in her time of grief, Mary began to miss her friends and her true home in Pennsylvania. Henceforth, she actively searched for property, hoping that one day an opportunity would present itself so that she could move home again. One day, a long-awaited message did arrive, only a day too late. At 5 a.m. on the morning of July 2nd, 1951, Pansy Carpenter was awoken to the sound of a dull thud, followed by the faint smell of smoke. Odd, but apparently not alarming enough, she played it off as an issue with the garage's electric pump, rolled over, and tried to go back to sleep. By 6 a.m., when she didn't hear Mary's radio playing, usually a clear indication that she was up for the day, she grew concerned. Then at 8 a.m., when a Western Union boy arrived knocking at her door with a telegram from Mrs. Reeser, Pansy had no problem offering her services to hand-deliver it personally to quell her concerns once and for all. When she arrived, a nightmare awaited. When Pansy tried Mary's front door, the handle radiated with a burning heat rendered it too hot to touch. She yelled out to the Western Union boy, who she had just spoken to while he slowly drifted out of sight down the street. Out of earshot, no help could be garnered. Painters from across the street took notice. When motioned by Pansy, 2 sprung to action. Pansy ran to call the local fire department and Mary's son as the painters eagerly tried to get inside the home. One did, and through an assault of lingering smoke, he searched the house the best he could, making an awful discovery in his venture. He had found Mary, or what was left of her. The fire department made the following shocking discoveries. What remained of Mary was a pile of ashes, a shrunken skull, her backbone, and her left foot still clad in its slipper. Interestingly, a majority of the surrounding area had remained unscathed from the fire. The fire did, however, leave the light switch next to her chair completely melted, though an outlet just below it unscathed and fully functioning. Candles in a nearby window liquefied, but newspapers that sat on a water heater just inches below, undamaged. Also, a clock in the room remained frozen at 4:20 a.m. A full investigation was launched into Mary's unusual death that even involved the FBI, with J. Edgar Hoover taking special interest. Ultimately, the FBI, in their July 31st, 1951 final verdict, would concur what Mary's son Richard and St. Petersburg Police Chief J.R. Reichardt initially concluded that Mary had fallen asleep with a cigarette in her hand, and that set her ablaze. Although the verdict was made, many speculate a wide range of possibilities, with spontaneous human combustion being the most popular, and other scenarios include a freak happening of ball lightning to the farthest extent of reality, and Mary Reeser being visited by the devil itself. Dr. Irving Bentley. The 1966 case of Dr. Irving Bentley is the catalyst for my interest in spontaneous human combustion. Growing up in Coudersport, Pennsylvania, more than 30 years after the event, I constantly heard whispered debates about the true possibility of Dr. Irving Bentley's death, convincing me that even almost 500 years after Polonus Vorstus, with all the advancements in medical discoveries, we still wonder about the true possibilities of the human body, caught in the fringe between fact and fiction. Dr. Irving Bentley was a family physician who served the Coudersport area between 1925 and 1953. After his retirement, he lived a typical quiet small-town life in his 2-story home on North Main Street. Since the gas meter for his home was located in the basement, there was a spoken agreement with the North Penn Gas Company that they were allowed to enter his home when they needed for a meter reading. This was all fine and dandy until one fateful morning on December 5th, 1966. On the morning of December 5th, Don Gosnell, like any time before, let himself into Dr. Bentley's home around 9 a.m. for his usual meter reading. Upon reaching the basement, he is overwhelmed by what he described as a sickly, sweetish smell. Following his nose, it led him to an ominous pile of ashes in the middle of the floor. Tracing the trickling ashes from above, his eyes landed on a large hole in the ceiling, encircled by glowing embers. Gosnell rushed to the room he noticed as the bathroom, shouting out Dr. Bentley's name in his pursuit, hoping for a response that unfortunately never came. When he arrived, so did the hideous truth. Dr. Bentley had been reduced to ash, leaving behind only his charred lower leg and a slippered foot. Oddly enough, his walker that he used to get to his master bathroom remained unscathed, tipped over into a hole burnt into the floor. Although the paint on the wall was charred black, it never blistered. All that were involved with the case believed that Dr. Bentley, being a smoker, may have caused the fire, but all remained flustered at the fact that his walker remained unscathed in a fire hot enough to reduce Dr. Bentley to mere ash. After his discovery, Gosnell ran a block to the North Penn Gas Company office, where the local volunteer fire department, the Potter County Deputy Coroner John Deck, and local mortician Richard Lindholm were all contacted and summoned. Once the smoke had settled, the Deputy Coroner delivered the following statement. "Looks like Doc Bentley was smoking his pipe. The pipe toppled over and spilled over the tobacco, and, in the meantime, he fell asleep. When he woke up, he was on fire because some of the flannel nightshirt pieces fell on the floor as he went to the bathroom." Ultimately, though highly debated, Dr. Bentley's death did not get labeled as a case of spontaneous human combustion, rather, the verdict of accidental death. Number 1. Michael Faraday. The case of Michael Faraday is the most recent spontaneous human combustion death to date, providing an undoubtable ruling in Coroner Dr. Kieran McLaughlin's declaration. On December 22, 2010, Michael Faraday, 76, of Galloway, Ireland, was found deceased in his home with visible signs of extreme burning. Although his body resided close to the living room fireplace, forensic experts declared that the fire found within was not the catalyst for Michael burning to death. Michael, who was found lying on his back, had his whole body burned to an ashy remain, without the fire spreading throughout the rest of the home. Here the fire remained within the vicinity of his body, only serving fire damage to the floor directly below it and the ceiling directly above it. Additionally, forensic investigators found no accelerant sources or evidence that existed of foul play. Ultimately, the scenario forced the hand of Coroner Dr. Kieran McLaughlin to make a declaration that he hadn't ever used in his 25 years of death investigations prior. After consulting multiple medical textbooks and extensive research into every possible avenue, Dr. McLaughlin announced the cause of death as spontaneous human combustion after finding striking comparisons to the unusual cause in a book by Professor Bernard Knight on forensic pathology that explains that countless cases of spontaneous human combustion take place near an open fire. His official statement is as follows: "The fire was thoroughly investigated, and I'm left with a conclusion that fits into the category of spontaneous human combustion, for which there's no adequate explanation." So, what do you think? Does the idea of spontaneous human combustion hold any true weight? Or is it an explanation casually tossed as a means to a case that is otherwise unexplainable? Sure, the wick theory is a common scientific explanation, but it has its shortcomings in explaining how a body is reduced to mere ash at temperatures that are not normally reached. And how exactly is the fire contained to only the victim's body? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.